Good evening. Welcome to an early edition of Cat Space. I'm Kat. This is Buckets. With us tonight is Leon and Luna. Howdy.
Hello.
Mhm.
Okay, so the topic today is homegrown in our own backyard. Australia's cost of living crisis. We're all going to take turns answering these questions. Question number one: what would you say is the biggest cost of living crisis right now? Leon, I'm going to throw this to you.
Uh, the biggest costs are well, obviously rent at the moment. That's a major factor. The cost of electricity is also a major. Also, the cost of foods at the moment. Just go to the shops. There's everything is going up faster at this time. However, balancing it out with money coming in, it's not balanced at the moment. So people are actually forced to spend less on food, which is costing more at the moment, and even rent and electricity. People have to figure out, I'm going to have to stop or something, but what am I going to stop?
Exactly. Good answer, Lou. Next question is yours. What would you say is the biggest cost of living crisis right now?
It's a toss up between either rent or food, grocery. Um, if I really had to pick one, I'm going to go with grocery. Even though there's a massive spike in an increase in rent, I think that the grocery is just so unbelievably greedy of the supermarkets, the massive supermarkets. It's been proven that they don't need to charge that much. They're working way above their margin lines every single year. And yeah, it's just increasing more and more every year.
Good answer. Buckets. Same question, your reply, sir. What would you say is the biggest cost of living crisis right now?
In my opinion, there are three areas. Rent is a massive one. Okay, that's the vast majority of everyone's paycheck is going towards rent, so that's a big one. Food, but also the cost of petrol is going up. And why would petrol be big? Well, if you're trying to get fresh fruit and vegetables to A to B, so from the farms to the shops, for example, the farmers um, will actually have to charge more, so to be able to afford the petrol to stay in business. And I think that's where our government has really failed by saying, "Oh yeah, we're just going to go tax the rich," without realizing the um, the trickle down effect of taxing people at the petrol pump. You know what does it mean when petrol prices go up for companies? So yeah, petrol is a big one. Oil is a big one. Um, rent and also food. Those are the three big ones in my opinion.
I like all your answers. I'd have to say, besides rent, would have to be as you said, groceries. For us, for example, we're having to use Marley Spoon in order to survive. We've actually saved quite a lot of money on shopping because when we order Marley Spoon, we know exactly what we want, and it helps us last what 4 or 5 days. Yeah, so that'll be it. Next question. Leon, what needs to be done in order to fix the cost of living?
Well, what needs to be done is the cost of inflation needs to come down, and it's come down a lot at the moment. It's a high level right now. It's at its highest level in quite some time. I don't exactly have the numbers on me right now, but it is. But the cost of inflation has gone up a lot. I think it is starting to come back a little bit, but it needs to come back down a lot. But what we also need to see is when that cost of inflation comes down, we need to see the businesses, the bit small and big businesses, bring those costs down as well. But while the rent's up, there you'll find that where it should be, where the numbers should be, the cost of inflation coming down, they're only doing it halfway, so that way they can at least keep running. So the cost of inflation needs to come down as well as the cost of living. They need to come down simultaneously in order for a better balance to happen.
Good answer. Luna, what needs to be done in order to fix the cost of living crisis?
So again, the major corporations need to be held accountable. They can't keep increasing the price of grocery basic stuff when it's been proven that it costs just way less for some of these products. Again, they need to bring back an even cheaper store brand, the Best Buys or whatever it's called. Within rent, there needs to be there needs to be some sort of legislation put in, a bill put in stating that the increase of rent can only happen every 5 years of gestation that you've had the property, and it needs to be done through the property needs to be valued, the property needs to be measured, and there needs to be an evaluator there to give it a proper estimate on what the proper price of that property should be. They should not just be allowed to increase it willy-nilly every year or every time that your contract ends for whatever reason. And there should be some sort of clause too where they have to do an upgrade. If the property's 10 or 15 years older, or they should have to keep maintenance done every 6 months. There should be agencies supporting this and really understanding that rent is really a crisis right now in Australia, and that these private renters especially are absolutely just taking people to the cleaners.
Good answer. Buckets, what needs to be done in order to fix the cost of living crisis right now?
Okay, so you guys are going to have to figure out, or everyone has to figure out, or the government has to figure out, what is happening, and this is for everything. This is for the rental crisis, the food crisis, and the oil crisis. They need to figure out what are the base ingredients which are creating the underlying costs. So I don't know if you realize that, but a lot of fruit and vegetables, they're in plastic containers and or plastic packaging. Plastic might have a carbon tax on it. So if the government has a carbon tax on something plus a GST, it means that the farmers actually have to raise the cost in order to pay that carbon tax, kind of thing. So that's one thing they've got to take into consideration. The other consideration that you need to see it from the point of view is from the landlords. What kind of rates are they paying? Why do they need to raise the rent? Who do they need to raise the rent for? Is it just to pay the government rates, or is it that they're having to pay these extra agencies because they're raising the cost of how much it is to do all those duties, those background duties that you don't actually see? And the oil thing is, why are we charging so much money at the petrol pump? Is it because of environmental reasons, or is it because the country that we're getting all the oil from has put an extra tax on it, so it's made the petrol too expensive, so we have to charge it? So I think if the government can figure out, in order to make a product, what are all the overheads, I think that's the way to tackle and lower the cost of living.
Good answer. Next question, Leon. How do we hold our government or our MPs accountable or responsible?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, the Prime Minister of Australia Anthony Albanese did say that he was going to keep the electricity prices lower, and he also gave a $275 rebate or whatever, just to combat the cost of electricity. Well, the price of electricity now has gone above what he's given us, or he's given everybody. So he's going to be accountable for that for the next couple of years until at least he pulls the election, or calls an election. So he's going to have that hanging over him at least for the next 3 years, because he's the one that was in charge of Australia when he said that line, and now the cost of electricity has gone up, and it's quite frankly, it is still going up, and a lot of people are struggling to pay that. So he'll be held accountable, because when it's time for the election, you watch all the networks in Australia, all the networks here in Australia, whether or not it's TV, radio, whatever, you will see that clip being played over and over again. In the same way that Julia Gillard's 2007 promise that there'll be no carbon tax under a government I lead. That pretty much hounded Julia Gillard into the ground until she was overthrown by Kevin Rudd. And this is going to be the same thing is going to happen to Anthony Albanese, but I don't think he's going to get rolled. I don't think he'll get rolled for it, because you need the majority of their caucus now. But he is going to wear the brunt of that. So that's one of a bunch of dominoes that Anthony Albanese is going to have to face, because he was the one who said that line.
Exactly. Good answer, Luna. How do we hold our government and MPs accountable or responsible?
You know, I hear a lot of people calling for a re-election. At the end of the day, there was a lot of promises made when he first came in. There were so many promises made. He was elected in for a reason. Let's not all lie. And I have failed to see anywhere where he's, maybe he's listed out a few problems, but he's not solved anything. He's not, and all these big issues he refuses to kind of fix or address how bad it truly is. They need to, how do we hold them responsible? The people need to speak out. What more can I say? There needs to either be a revote or something needs to change.
Vote with your feet.
Buckets. Question. Good answer, Luna. How do we hold our government and MPs accountable or responsible?
As much as I'd like to say that protesting works, unfortunately it doesn't, because we have a police force that will brutally destroy the protesters if it's not done peacefully. However, our protesters will acknowledge that there is a problem. Now, everyone knows that there is a problem. So I think really the people that really will hold our politicians accountable are the local members. And I think if the Labor Party wants to continue its power, it really does need to swap out the current Prime Minister that we have, Albanese, because if they don't, they will lose the election. You want to know how you address these problems? Talk to your local members, address them. And if they don't solve them or fix them or sweep them under the carpet, then you know that this is not the member for me, and therefore do not vote that member in for the next election, because they simply cannot be trusted to solve a problem that you've asked to be solved. So you need to trust someone else. I in my life have voted for both Labor, Liberal, the Greens before, purely based off what will they do for me. Okay, before it was just Labor and that was it. But now I'm like, okay, what can these people do for me? And I think everyone should vote that way. Because otherwise, if you don't vote that way, then they'll never be held accountable, right? Because it just becomes a popularity vote after that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I do want to bring out one sentiment that Luna did bring up, and that's a small one, which is there were a lot of promises made, but not kept, right? So. And there are a lot of, as she said, there's no point, is a lot of people are calling for an early election. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I, for one, can admit to say I would like to see an early election happen. Not that it will, but I think it's due time that everything that's happened has happened for the worst. and dare I say it, in a very respectful manner, is that I strongly believe, even though we are the most wealthiest country in the world, the most beautiful country in the world, our country, she's at her knees. She's fallen. And the only way it can be picked up is something else Leon brought up. I'll bring that up is inflation needs to come down in New York together. There has to be a solution. And I think the only way to hold our government or our MPs accountable or responsible is what Bucket said. Vote with your mind, not your heart or feelings. Vote with the person who works for you. We hire them to do a job. We pay their salaries to do their job. Right? So they have to be held responsible for what's going on. A lot of people are sleeping in tents. A lot of people are being evicted. I've watched some horror stories of Australians mentioning that they're being forced out of their homes. They're being evicted for no reason. Why? These issues can be fixed.
And I'd like to bring something up about that. The thing is, you've got two problems here, which is the landlords can't afford to maintain their houses because of the cost of living crisis, and the tenants can't afford to stay there. And so what happens is the landlord, having the only assets, end up selling the house to someone else. And so the tenants are forced to leave because they're renting and they have nothing else. So you've got a problem with the landlords that where with the cost of living, and then you've got the problem with the tenants who don't have anything. So both sides of the coin are being screwed here. You know, I think that you can help both sides, but the tenants really need the help because they have nothing.
Exactly. Here's another one last point, and I'll pick
No.
that.
Sorry, before you do that, sorry, I'm going to add on to what Phil said. How are you holding your governments and MPs to account? Well, there is an upcoming by-election in the seat of Dunkle, which I believe is over there. I believe that's in Victoria, I believe, or something along those lines, on the 2nd of March. So this will be the first of the tests that Anthony Albanese will be facing. The by-election coming up on the 2nd of March. His job's not on the line, however, an MP's might be.
I agree. The only thing I want to bring up, and that's a very small one, which is Paul Murray mentioned something not that long ago, and if I remember correctly, him saying, when will too much become way too much? When will this nightmare end? When will the government really look at itself and be, pardon my French for saying this, embarrassed and ashamed for what's happening? I mean, I'm not blaming a particular person here. I'm just respectfully saying that this government has done nothing for nobody. And it's just, we need a stronger government that will lead, and will lead for the people, not lead for themselves. All we need is what you all have said: bring down inflation, figure out a way to feed everybody. You know, it's.
Can I add something to that? Sorry to interrupt you, but aren't you just sick and tired of everyone blaming the war on Ukraine for the reason why Australia is going down the gurgler? I don't think it's just Ukraine as to why we're going down the gurgler. I think that's one demon out of a whole bunch of other demons that are going on. It's just that they're blaming Ukraine for everything, like it's a scapegoat for all of the world's problems. I just think that it's a lousy excuse, and I think that it negates any sort of responsibility that the government has for its own people.
Exactly.
I get sick of that too. The fact that people are blaming the war on Ukraine. This has nothing to do with the Ukraine. So anybody who's saying that is just spinning and lying through their buck teeth.
Exactly. Here's the question that I think is very important for all of us to ask. Okay, here we go. How can big corporations be held responsible for the cost of living crisis when it comes to places like Coles and Woolworths if you can expand on that, I'd love some help, Leon.
Well, as you know, Woolies and Coles, they're the two big, they're the big two at the moment. Now, they're currently facing, I believe, a Senate inquiry regarding their pricing and stuff like that. They're the major corporations. Now, you could, I don't know, you can't, if you threaten to fine them, that won't do them any good because here's the money from my back pocket. I'm still going to do it the same way because they're making too much money out of it. So if they get fined, they're just going to, just pay up and that's it. We'll continue to do things our way. Now, I think the only way that could be held responsible, I don't know, is there a possibility that they could be deregistered as a business in Australia? Because if they could, that will force these big corporations to, snap out of this price gouging thing, which is currently being investigated. That'll snap them out real quick, because if they don't have a registered business or whatever to run in Australia, they're done. I don't care how much money they're making, they're finished.
Can I add something to that? The reason why that's economically risky is because if you suddenly cancel someone's legal right to make any money, you're also firing a whole bunch of staff that are working for either Woolworths or Coles. And unfortunately, it's almost like Coles and Woolworths are holding all their employees at ransom, and that's what it kind of feels like. So, I mean, but if you want my honest opinion, I'd like to build on what Leon was actually saying. This whole thing about having an investigation 3-4 years later, okay, if they got busted for price gouging is not enough. If they are guilty of price gouging, they should actually get busted straight away, not 3 or 4 years down the track. I think that's a joke completely.
Luna, please answer this. How can big corporations be held responsible for the cost of living crisis, especially when it comes to places like Coles and Woolworths?
So it was recently proven, and I think there was a Four Corners episode actually with the CEO of a Safeway or Coles or whatever it was, and they actually showed them the facts, and they looked up these products, and they compared at the normal prices and what markets are selling them for, and that type of stuff. And they brought the facts to them, and they said, so what's this all about? Why is a pumpkin being sold for $2.95 a kilo over here and $7.95 a kilo in Coles? And at the end of the day, Coles and Woolies have been known to be selective with their picks. The things that they don't pick, there's actually a company that buys them. They're a really great wholesaler company. And they pick all the ones that weren't aesthetic. They didn't look good. So therefore the customers wouldn't buy them because they don't look good. So I guess, they'll try and justify that that's why the price is. But in terms of what they can do, they can be fair. There should be some sort of cap on how much you can charge for things. They should, being they have so many workers who struggle to survive anyway, the CEOs of these companies should be absolutely disgusted in the way that they're not only price gouging us citizens, but they're also completely underpaying and also price gouging their customers, their workers. Maybe a boycott for a while at the end of the day. I know that's a really hard thing to say, but there is certain things that you can do to make sure that they kind of play fair. But at the end of the day, people keep going there. They're not going to drop the prices at all, which is the worst thing, but that's what they need to do.
I think from what I heard, last year sometime, was that Coles staff were actually on strike for being severely underpaid, and they kept going on strike. I think that strike is over now, I'm not sure, but I think those who get underpaid because CEOs just don't know business. They, sure they must have studied business and economics, but underpaying your staff is despicable. And these people work really, really hard to help us. They're the frontline workers. They're the ones who have to put up with everything while we're shopping. And I just think they need to be held responsible for price gouging customers, thinking we're the scapegoats, that we're silly, that we won't notice. We do notice, and we've been noticing hard. And this is why now, as Leon said, they're being sent to Parliament and they're being scrutinized for everything. And I think it's only fair if they want consumers to keep shopping at their stores is to bring the prices of items down. A lot of people are, you know, before Molly Spoon, we were going to Coles and Aldi just to make ends meet. I mean, the meat's cheaper at Aldi, but everything else is Coles. I mean, people are now, saw this on the news last week, people are now switching to Aldi in droves by the thousands, heading to Aldi just to shop because their prices are reasonable. Fair game.
And even in Aldi standards, actually, like I've shopped at Aldi for a lot of years now. Even in Aldi standards, the prices have gone up. I'm spending more in Aldi now than I used to.
I'm actually noticing that it used to be before you just shop under one roof and that was it, and then you went home. But today
Yeah,
it's
I know, yeah.
actually shop under 3 roofs.
You got to go to 5 or 6 different stores to get the best discount prices, and that's it.
Because that's because otherwise you able to afford it. And look, there are certain stores like Woolworths that I try to avoid going to because it's too expensive to shop at Woolworths. So we'll go to Coles, Aldi, and then maybe the fruit market after that, because that's the only way that we can decently afford a week's worth of shopping, if not going to Marley Spoon to pay for the rest. Yeah, I mean, like it's gone. I think because our government hasn't properly addressed what's causing them to raise the prices. Is it just them being greedy, or is it just bad policy? Those prices will always skyrocket, and the Australian people will continue to suffer.
Have you also noticed sorry about that, have you also noticed that, so the likes of Coles and Woolies are also doing price trickery at the moment? You know how they got like buy 2 for X amount? They're now doing buy 3 for X amount. I've noticed that with Woolworths a lot lately, like with the McCain's pizzas, because like they've used be like buy 3 for $18 or whatever like that. Well, you buy 3 of them individually, it's still cheaper sometimes, but they try to gush it up to make it a 3 for, and they shouldn't be doing that. 2 should be a maximum, and I agree. I think Luna said it earlier on about price cap. There should be caps on items, so you don't go too far above what market value should be.
As far as because I looked it up once, and I'm pretty sure that Australia does not have a price cap on things. So if you're a business and you really want to charge, $100,000 for a capsicum, I mean, if someone's willing to buy it, then that's it.
Well, they have a tax cap, so they're not allowed to tax fruit and vegetables because they're GST free. But anything else that's in a package or as a service.
Well, there you go. Exactly. In America, granulated coffee is so like a poor man's coffee, if that makes sense. But we're buying it for like $15 a can here in the shopping center. Over there, it's like $3 to $4 for the shopping store granulated coffee. It just doesn't make sense as to why they're charging so much for deodorant, $7, $8.
It's not even good deodorant, is it? I mean, you may as well just save up for a month and buy
The only thing I want to say about that is, when on Christmas finished, straight away, I don't know if everyone in Australia notices, TikTok went mad over it. A lot of stores like Coles and Woolies, suddenly hot cross buns came out, and then the prices just went whoop up. I don't understand what the point is of hot cross buns and the prices of everything else that goes up. Suddenly it's holiday food, and they the prices of hot cross buns were expensive. I don't like hot cross buns myself, but forgive me for that. But the prices of them were so expensive. So every time like we get something, like take for example, Anzac Day is coming up soon. Usually a tin of Anzac cookies was, if I remember, $10. Now what is it going to be? $25 for a tin? You know.
I think someone is just going to be smart enough to go, look, I can't afford the shopping, so I'm going to make my own hot cross buns. I'll just get, a piping bag and some dough and stuff, or I'll just get some flour, self-raising flour, and I'll do everything at home because I simply cannot afford to go to Woolworths. I wouldn't. The thing is, when you buy things like flour or dough, even though it's mixed, people are just going to figure out, look, this is cheaper, easier, and probably more satisfying than actually having to cart all this crap from the supermarket and then realize that you're ripping me off whilst doing it, kind of thing.
Good. I think you're right about that. A lot of people will be doing homemade baking this year.
I think it'd always be about hot cross buns. Is why are they still selling them on December 26th when they're supposedly Easter stuff and they have a shelf life of a whopping 3 days, not 4 months.
Again, hot cross buns, and I think it's just Australia that consider them an Easter thing, but I can tell you that from my mum having English parents, she loved that they had them all year round. She thought it was the best. She buy them all the time, I'm telling you now. With butter, put them in the toaster. She made like 6 at a time.
Did your mum make them, or did
It's an English thing. They love hot cross buns.
Lastly, Leon, will we see change in cost of living crisis?
Will we see a change of cost of living? Yeah, we will. Once the inflation numbers start coming lower and everything starts balancing out, that's when we start seeing. That's when we start seeing that. That's when we start seeing the change. But unfortunately, it's still. I believe. What was it? The Reserve Bank, I believe, said we're still a long ways off before we start seeing things come back down to where they should be. I think we've still got probably at least a year to go before we start seeing a real cost of living change, like prices coming down. But unfortunately, we have to pretty much have to deal with this at the moment, at least for a little bit longer. So hopefully we're going to see things come down, and then we'll start seeing a balance where it should be.
Amen to that. Luna, will we see a change in cost of living crisis?
Again, I'm going to speak on inflation. It's not just in Australia that we have to see our inflation level out. It's also the rest of the world. The more the imports and exports cost, the more we have to travel around. Like we can't go through the Suez Canal right now, Suez Canal, whatever it's called. That's like an extra 50 days or something at sea. Like that's so much money. When things like that stop happening, when the whole world is able to recover, not only from COVID, but from all the wars that are happening, then we'll start to see things level out. In terms of just leveling out our inflation, though, that the whole world needs to level out first before our inflation is going to level out. It's not just because of us. It's because the whole world went through COVID and everyone's in debt right now. Everyone in every country in the world has got some sort of debt because of this, and they're trying to level out in their countries. So yeah, let's hope that we get through it quickly. But in terms of when it's going to happen, I have no idea.
Well, I said, finally, buckets. Will we see a change of cost of living crisis?
I'm going to make a joke out of this, but then I'll tell my proper answer. When have you ever seen change of a credit card? Ever? I've never gotten change off a credit card. I just get charged extra.
That's
Sorry,
a good one.
That's a bad joke. Anyway, look, I don't see this changing. In fact, I see it getting worse because unless our government or the farmers find a way to deal with the underlying costs that you know, end up that are created before the actual product is created, then it's always going to go up, which is sad, I know, but it's the truth, unfortunately. Because you got to. So just say there's a bunch of guys that are moving food, like say a bunch of lettuces to your local Coles or your local Aldi or your local Woolworths, or if you're in Melbourne, your local Safeway. Well, you got to employ the driver to get all your stuff out there, right? And that's an extra overlying cost. And then you've got all the taxes that go with that, right? And then you have to pay all the workers to basically harvest your crops and things like that. Like that's another cost kind of thing. So you're always.
And then you got to pay tax on top of all of that.
Yeah. Not to mention all the healthcare benefits and stuff like that. If only we had slave labor, I mean, we'd fix all those problems in no time.
Well, apparently Australia has one of the largest natural gas reserves, larger than Africa, larger than the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. And where in these countries, these people don't pay tax. Their government have so much money. They're dripping in oil money and shit like that. Where's our money? If we've got the largest natural, why just use that? Use that for our payment. We forfeit it. Take some of that, please. We want to be dripping in a natural gas money.
It's true. Dubai
And bling.
Iraq, and before they got invaded, Iran, I think Saudi Arabia, they had no tax because they didn't need it because they had too much oil. And
well, I'm sure they still don't. I'm pretty sure I read something recently where it said that they still don't. Some of them still don't have tax, and they're just living the high life. They got all these like Lamborghinis and like tigers and waterfalls in the desert. I want that.
The only thing I want to say before we close is that I pray and I hope and I remain optimistic that one day in our beautiful country of ours that we will see a change in cost of living crisis, whether it's through this government or whether it's through the next incoming government, whoever they may be. I hope they really sit down if they get elected and think about us civilians of this country, not just for themselves or their plane or their jets, where they're going to. It's important to take care of us here at home. I hope that they really look at the markets and see what's costing everybody a lot of money. I hope they look at, the price gouging, see what the big corporations doing like Coles and Woolworths. Have a look at the housing situation, fix the housing situation, put up more jobs, help people like us who really, really need it. It will be a great help. And, it might help people, to feel better and, put more money back into our hospitals and our doctors and nurses and teachers and education and work life and home life. I really hope and I really do pray for that stability, and that I do hope within the next year or two, we do see a massive drop when it comes to the cost of living crisis. Inflation will drop. That is my hope. And that's all I would like to say. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Buckets, Luna, and Leon, thank you so much for being here with us. Please don't forget to subscribe, like our comments, let us know what you think. Tomorrow we are doing another recording because tomorrow something special is happening. It's Cat Spade's 3rd birthday tomorrow. So we are back here to celebrate. Bring your drinks, your snacks, your party hats, whatever you want to eat and drink. Break it all on. Come and join us, celebrate our 3rd birthday being on air. Thank you so much. Peace and love to you all. And we love you.
Just before I go, I'd just like to say I am against slavery, so please don't sue me or edit the conversation.
See you in Canberra facing a Senate inquiry.
Until then, see you tomorrow night. Thank you to everybody. God bless. Until then, tomorrow night it is. Bye.
Bye.